Episode 52, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the footballing world to show you what it takes to be in the 11. This week, we have a super talented player in the 11. Seyi Adekyoa is here to talk about his journey up through the ranks of Seattle, onto college, and then kind of we lay out his professional career over the past couple of years. And it is a great conversation, so I can't wait to kick it over to that for you guys. I'm super excited as well because I know mental health in soccer has been something that I've always tried to talk about myself on this podcast, and always said I want to, continue to shed a light on it and continue to bring it to the forefront. And it's something that we were able to do a little bit in this episode, kind of towards the end. So stay tuned all the way to the back end for that part of our conversation. And before I kick it on over to the interview, if you could do me a favor, I know Spotify has now added this as well, whether you listen to Spotify, Apple, whatever your platform is, if you could just do me a favor, hit pause if you need to, and rate and review the pod. That would be awesome. Helps it grow. Quick, small thing that you can do just to help the show a little bit. So if you go ahead and do that, boom, hit it, and then hit play. And here we are with the interview with Seyi. Thanks so much.
Do you post videos or is it kind of just the audio?
I do both. The audio usually is more popular. More people listen to it solely on the audio, but I do the video just as another platform as well,
Cool. Where do you post the videos?
YouTube.
Okay, cool. Because I listen to your podcast with Chase, obviously, because I know Chase. But now I want to go back and watch the video because Chase is a funny guy.
Yeah, that was one of my funnier episodes. Did you cross paths at Tista?
Yeah, so initially he and I had the same agent, and my agent was like, "Oh, I have this American guy coming. He says he knows you." And I was like, "I've never heard of this person in my life." Like, yeah, like you've played against him in youth, and I'm like, "Probably, that makes sense." So we played against each other once or twice, and then eventually I ended up going to Tista with him. And actually meeting him there.
Because did you guys grow up like in the same area?
He was from like Portland area. I was from Seattle area, but for some reason we ended up playing. I think I remember traveling down south a couple times and playing his team, and his team was good, or they would travel up. So we definitely played maybe 2 or 3 times.
Was that before your time with going into the Sounders Academy, or was that during that time?
That was before. So I played with a youth club called Emerald City.
Okay.
And it was probably when I was playing for Emerald City that I played him, or maybe when I played for Crossfire. But both of those were club before Academy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, interesting. Such a small world, which I learned more and more now doing this podcast. It's always like I had another player on. His name's Armis, who went on trial at T-Stead, and when Chase was there as well. So I just feel like the world is so small.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I've actually heard his name too, because I think we all had the same agent, and I remember our agent was talking about him too, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I think he's injured right now, or just getting back from injury." Something
he might
like
be.
That.
Well, yeah. So he actually had cancer as well.
Oh, that's what it was.
He is recovering from that, and then I think last he was in, I want to say like Uzbekistan or something, or Kazakhstan maybe. And now he's back home right now. Last I've talked to him.
Okay. Yes, I remember my agent was definitely talking about him. He was like, "Oh, he's such a great player. He had cancer, but he's going to come back and play." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like that'll be great."
Yeah. It was a cool story listening to his as well. But
oh well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we could honestly include that as part of our intro. But for those of you who are tuning in with us, we are in the 11 this week with Seyi Adekyoa. He is currently in off season right now, and we were just discussing kind of how small the soccer community, the soccer world can sometimes be as you go up and up in the levels. But Seyi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So if we go back a little bit to kind of share your story, as we just mentioned there at the top, you were involved with the Sounders Academy in your youth career a little bit. So what was that like, that experience of being able to play for an MLS Academy?
It was good. So kind of like, probably, I think my friend Chase said this before, but academy was very, very fresh kind of when I was in high school. So I think around, junior year it started. I started on like Emerald City in Seattle, and then I eventually went to Crossfire in Seattle because they were just the best team in the area. And then as I was going to UCLA, my UCLA assistant coach and my head coach were kind of like, "Hey, you should think about playing academy." And I was kind of like, "No, thank you. I like I like playing with my friends on my club team." But they kind of pushed me towards it, and I actually ended up going to Sounders Academy, where one of my old Crossfire coaches was now the coach.
Okay.
So it was actually a pretty easy transition because I was kind of scared. I was going to try out for Sounders Academy maybe my junior year, but on the way down to the trial, because it was kind of south of Seattle, my dad was like, "Oh, I heard that Sounders Academy, they don't want you to go to college. So I don't know if I want you doing this." And my dad and my parents are both very big on school. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I was very scared of trialing, making it. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't know if they want us to go to college. Maybe I should trial. So we actually went down to the trial, but I didn't trial.
Okay.
It's a very long story. I'm so sorry.
But, no, you're good. You're good. This is what it's here for.
But anyways, the year I actually was going to go to Sounders Academy, I contacted my former coach. His name was Dick McCormick. And he was like, "Yeah, actually, I've been watching you, and I think you'd be a good fit for this." So I didn't even have to trial that time, which was great. So yeah, that was very easy. And a lot of the people who were actually on the Sounders Academy team at that time were people who I'd played with back on my old Crossfire team. So the coach's son, Duncan McCormick, Henry Wingo, who you might know of, he's playing in I think Hungary right now. He was in Sweden for a while. A lot of other good people, David Olson and other people who I grew up with playing against were on that team. But long ways to say, Sounders Academy was good. I thought it was very cool to be in a professional youth organization. Like, you go from kind of bring your own water, sometimes you bring your own balls to training, to like everything's there. You have like two physios there on the pitch at all times, handing out water. The coach went from drill to drill to drill. So it was definitely a big step up, and a very, very, very good experience for, being on a different type of team and kind of pushing myself level wise.
Yeah, absolutely. What it sounds like with you and your family as well, you maybe had differing ideas or the same idea about what you really wanted to do with soccer. Did you always kind of know that you wanted to one day become a professional, or was the education route kind of the way that you wanted to go, and soccer maybe opened some doors for you in that way? What was your thought process growing up as a youth player that did maybe change when you got to the Sounders?
That is a great question. Yeah, going back to my parents / my family, my dad is from Nigeria. My mom is from Japan. Both of them, it's kind of funny because you have like strict African parent on one side, and then also kind of like tiger momish Asian parent on the other side. So it's very much just like, do your schoolwork. Yeah. So yeah, growing up, very much my parents were like, it's important to get an education. It's important to go to college. It's important to finish college, things like that. So I think always, anyone who plays soccer, anyone who grows up playing a sport, it's like, yeah, I'm probably going to be pro in this, or like, I'd love to be pro in this. That'd be so fun. Yeah. So I definitely had professional aspirations for a while, but I think for myself growing up, I never put too much weight on it. It was never like, you have to be pro in this, or you have to do this and that to be pro. I was very much just like, soccer is something I loved doing. I'd go out in the backyard and play just in the rain. Didn't matter, just because I loved watching, let's say, Neymar videos. Love Neymar. Probably watch every single one when I was growing up, and then going in the backyard and pretending to be him, or doing those skills in games. So I don't think it was something I ever fully focused on, but it was something that kind of ended up happening just through kind of my love of the game and how much I played.
Yeah, and it obviously it worked out in the sense that you were able to kind of achieve both of those dreams, of going to an extremely prestigious university like UCLA, and getting to play at such a high level, and now obviously achieving that dream of playing professionally for the past few years. What was the decision like to choose UCLA, to move down to California and play for, one of the best college soccer programs that's around?
I feel like in general, the process of people choosing colleges at 16, 17 is a joke.
Oh my
Like,
God. Yeah.
I think it's so foolish that I remember just like going back to this thing about my parents. I went to a pretty like prestigious high school in Seattle called Lakeside, and all of us were just like Ivy League or bust,
Yeah.
pretty much. So in my mind, I was like Ivy League or bust. So I remember one of the first schools that like hit me up was probably like University of Michigan or like UCSB, and I was like, not interested. No, keep it. So for me, I did like a Harvard soccer camp. I emailed Stanford, like all these different schools, Dartmouth. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. Dartmouth was actually one that was interested. And another school I was really interested in was Penn. But anyways, after my junior year of playing club, we went to like regionals in Hawaii, which was really cool. And my coach was like, hey, like you should go to this UCLA camp. I think UCLA would be a really good fit for you.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, whatever, sure, I'll go. So I ended up going to the UCLA soccer camp. And if anyone's listening to this and you're trying to figure out how to get into a school, 100% go to their camps, because, you know, let's say there are 300 people there. Again, 150 are just local kids who their parents are like, you're going to go to this school one day. So they just throw them at this camp, and the kids are usually horrible. So like if you're good, you'll easily stand out. So highly recommend camps. Went to the camp, did really well. Met some of the people on the team. And then, yeah, when I was leaving, I was at the airport, and the coach was kind of like, hey, we really want you to come here. So like, let's start working on, you know, whatever it takes to get you here. So sending in paperwork and stuff. So I got really lucky going to UCLA and getting an offer from the camp. The only other thing was I was still kind of thinking Ivy League.
Mhm.
And Dartmouth was really interested in me. And I'd been emailing the Penn men's soccer coach all summer because one of my good friends, her name is Darby, played soccer, went to high school with me, was going to Penn. And another friend from Sounders Academy was also going to Penn. And they were like, you would love it here. You should definitely come with us. So I almost went to Penn, but the coach never responded to me. So I think it was August 9th, I was deciding, I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to UCLA. And the Penn coach emailed me that day, like, oh, like, hey, didn't see any of your emails. Would love for you to come here. And I was like, no, it's too late. So went to UCLA. But very happy to have gone to UCLA, as you know, such a great program, such a great school. But also, you know, just like athletically, they produce so many professional players. So I thought it was a great environment to, you know, meet the people I did and be in the program I was, which is such a great program.
Yeah, I think you hit such an important point that it's something I talk about with, I've done a little bit of college coaching as well and experienced different levels. And it's something that you'll hear a lot of college coaches say. It's like, my job, my livelihood depends on like the decision makers of 17-year-olds, you know, which is such an insane thing to think about. And, you know, I look back at it too, like, did I fully know what I was getting into when I was picking a college or what that really entailed, you know, picking university? No, but it's funny, like you say, how just little things like that when you're young, that Penn coach could have emailed you 2 weeks earlier, could have completely changed your decision. Who knows where you'd be at right now? It's such an interesting kind of path to go down when you think of those little decisions.
Completely different. I think, again, when I was picking UCLA, my dad and I were kind of going over it. We're like, the weather's nice, like that's good. It's better than the East Coast. And it's like California. My sister went to USC, so we're like, we like California, right? All right, cool. And they play good soccer. All right. And the academics are good. Cool. Check it off. Let's do it.
Yep.
So weird.
Oh man. So was there a big jump in level going from the Sounders Academy footballing wise to UCLA?
There definitely was a jump. I remember committing to UCLA, and a lot of people were kind of telling me like, oh, why would you commit there? Like, you're not going to play at all. You're kind of just going to flunk out. And for me, again, at that point, it wasn't even about, I don't know, like playing on the team so much or like starting and getting a lot of minutes. I was just like excited to be going to UCLA and still playing soccer at all. So when I got there, I was definitely nervous. I feel like I was kind of bad at the beginning because I was very nervous, and I defer a lot to older players. You had people like Leo Stoltz there who, you know, ended up winning the Mac Herman my freshman year. So I was definitely very timid, and there definitely was a level jump in terms of learning how UCLA played, because they had a very distinct style of possession at that time. So definitely was a level jump, but I think quickly got the hang of it. And yeah, things actually turned out very well for me that freshman year.
I think to be honest, I think it's refreshing to hear a player talk openly about, you know, going into somewhere and being kind of nervous and having to adjust to that. Because I think a lot of times what players do is either they just won't admit that, or they just kind of, you know, give you the typical line of, oh yeah, there was a learning curve and I had to adjust when I got in there. And then I started to figure it out. But in reality, what that means, if you read between the lines, is no, when I got there, I was nervous and I couldn't really figure out how to get my footing. And then eventually things started to click a little bit. So I think that's refreshing to hear a player be like, no, when I went in there, I was nervous, but then day after day of training, and that's what training's for, is you get a little bit more comfortable each day.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, each level you go to, there's going to be some sort of, even if it's not a skill difference, it's still like a kind of like a learning curve, or just like a stylistic difference that you definitely have to pick up on and learn how to function within that system or environment. So yeah, UCLA was it was good. It was definitely different, but it was good. And I'm happy that eventually, you know, I overcame the nervousness, kind of realized, you know, it's just soccer. It's all the same. In the end.
Yeah. Once you figured out that, you know, the ball is round and the field is still the same and everyone's playing the same game, then you wound up having a pretty successful career. And how would you kind of summarize your UCLA experience? What do you reflect on of it?
Oh, that is a broad question. There's so many things that go into my UCLA career. My freshman year was great, turned out being super good. I remember on our first road trip, we played, I want to say like we played like UNC, and we played one other team that I can't remember. We played two very good teams. They were just coming off like a very successful year the year prior. And our coach, Jorge Salcedo, infamous name, he was very much like, yeah, let's hit the ground running. So we played two really hard teams. I think we played Wake. I ended up getting, I think, a goal and an assist, or 2 goals or something like that. And I think I got like right off the bat, I got like top jar player of the week, or in one of those, you know, accolade systems that means nothing to me now. But when I was growing up, like
at that time, it's the biggest thing in the world. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your name on some random website. I was like, yeah. But yeah, usually, like, you know, instead of going into too much detail about every single year, I really enjoyed it. I think I met a lot of really good people and also really good players. You know, I played with Jackson Ewell. I played with Jose Hernandez. I played with Abu Dunladi. I played with Leo Stoltz. I played with Michael Amick. You know, we had such a good Eric Holt. We had such a good team. Oh, Reggie Cannon. If I didn't say Reggie Cannon, it was insane, the talent that was going through. But also, there are so many people who maybe stopped playing that were so good. I always think about, we had a player named Willie Ray Goza, who's such a talented midfield player, and still is such a good player, but he just ended up not playing anywhere. So, you know, a lot of good people, a lot of good players. It was interesting to go through a program like that and see the quality. And then, you know, you see some people like Reggie and Jackson are like at the top, and then some people stop playing. So it was cool.
Yeah. Were there characteristics maybe on the field or even off the pitch as well that you could start to see from those types of players? Like, oh, he's going to go on to do really big things. Or were there other players that, like you said, that had that technical ability, but then you were surprised that they didn't kind of go on to do the same things?
I think the person I can speak about the most is Reggie. Reggie was only there for 1 year. He was a freshman. I was a junior. Reggie is like fanatical. Reggie's insane. Like, the only thing that man ever thought about was like being a pro.
Really?
And everything he did was like, I want to be a pro. Actually, yeah. So Reggie, I remember after we lost our playoff game in Louisville, in like the second round, Reggie was crying on the field. And I was like, oh, Reggie, like, you've got so many years left. Like, don't worry. Like, it's no problem. And this man up and just left and went pro to like FC Dallas. And now he is where he is. So I would say I could definitely see in Reggie, like Reggie, that was the only thing he wanted. He was very focused on it. He loved the game. And he's one of those people who's like very goofy off the pitch, but then as soon as you're playing, like completely different person.
Yeah.
Yes. That, and then I would also talk about a female player, Jessie Fleming, who's on Chelsea. I remember seeing her all the time. She would be, by herself on the field working on her touch. And she was such a good player. She's playing for the women's national team since she was like, I don't even know, but I remember when she joined, she was like 16, 17, playing on the women's national team. But like I could see her drive and her work ethic and how focused she was, because she would just be doing things by herself all the time. So those are two people who I would say was like, yeah, you could tell that they were destined for greatness. Where Jessie was already great.
Yeah. Wow. So your experience, you were there at 3 years at UCLA, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, were you able to get the degree, or was that a tough conversation to have with mom and dad?
Very tough. Did not get the degree. So kind of the path that led me to leaving UCLA was, there was this. So my roommate, Abu Dunladi, great player, is Ghanaian. And there's a Ghanaian guy who, I don't even know how to describe him, but he's a really good guy. He's basically very connected into like the professional world, especially in Europe. And he was one of the people who helped Abu get a lot of trials. So Abu, not to speak too much about him, but he went on a couple European trials and did really well, but ultimately decided to stay in the States. And since I was his roommate, he would watch some UCLA games, and he was like, hey, I think you're a good player. Like, would you want to go abroad? He told me this after my freshman year. And I was kind of like, with my dad, I was like, no, like we're like going to go through school. Like I kind of I still have aspirations of being a doctor. So we were very much like, no, we're going to go the med school route. No, thanks. After my sophomore year, going into my junior year, I don't know what it was, but the opportunity came up again, and I was very interested in going pro at the time. So I went on a trial to Las Palmas in Spain, and I didn't make it because they were kind of like, you're too old, you're 20, turning 21, you either need to be on the pro team, you can't be on the youth team, and you're not good enough for the pro team. This is a very long rant.
No, this is good. This is important.
So after that, I started getting the itch to go pro. And after my junior season, the other thing was I was trying to look at classes for the next quarter. And a lot of my pre-med psychobiology classes were at the same time as practice, which is, like either 9 to 11 or 11 to 1. So I was like, dang, like, I don't know if I can take any classes this upcoming quarter, or I'm going to have to be missing a lot of practice. So it kind of happened perfectly that I got the itch to go pro at the same time that my classes were starting to conflict with soccer. And I just went on this European opportunity and got very excited about possibilities there. So I did have to talk to my dad about, hey, I want to leave school. And he was not so hot about that. But luckily, UCLA has this program where if you finish at least half of your degree with, good academic standing, you can come back and finish with the scholarship that you left on. So I came into UCLA on like a book scholarship, whatever, couple $100. But by the end of my junior year, I was on a full. So luckily I can go back and finish UCLA for free later on. And that was the only reason my dad was like, okay, fine, you can go play.
Yeah,
So,
I'll sign off on this because you can finish it one day.
Exactly.
Is that ever difficult to balance, a pre-med track with the demands of a Division I football program like that?
Definitely. A lot. I feel like going into UCLA, the athletics department was like, the academics department is very understanding. Like if you have tests on the road, you can get them proctored, or you can get them moved, things like that. But I found a lot of my professors were kind of like, no, I don't want you to take this test early because, you might tell people what it's like, or you shouldn't take it late because people tell you. So a lot of my classes were very tough because I had to like the final would be my whole grade or stuff like that. Or I would just have to eat missing a test, things like that. So it was very difficult. I think ultimately that was another reason why I was like, okay, maybe I should give the pro thing a shot now, and then do the rest of my academics later when I'm a little less busy.
Yeah. So once you finally had that decision made of, okay, it's time for me to go professional, was that first thought to go overseas, or did just kind of it fall into place that the homegrown contract with going back home to Seattle just worked out and that was the right move for you?
So I had his name is Peter, the guy who's Ghanaian, who was helping the boot and kind of took me to my first European opportunity. Peter was telling me hey, look, if you want to go abroad, I think I can get you some teams, Scandinavia, I can set you up on some trials. And on the other side, I had like Sean Henderson and the Sounders being like, hey, like you should definitely go pro here. We'd love to have you. And ultimately what won out was the idea of me being close to home. I never envisioned myself going abroad ever. That was not ever really anything I was interested in. So when it came down to it, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to, you know, be at home, hometown team, like live with my family, get recognized in Seattle, all that homegrown hype that there is. I definitely bought into it. So yeah, chose to be a homegrown.
Was there ever, I know you spoke to a little bit that kind of nervousness first getting to UCLA. Was there ever a little bit of that signing, as you were the 8th ever homegrown player in the Sounders history, and you know some of the names that preceded you are some pretty big names, especially in terms of US soccer. Was there ever a little bit of that kind of nervousness to live up to that name, that hype of being a Seattle Sounders homegrown contract?
I feel like there was nervousness, but it wasn't because of my predecessors or, you know, anyone else. I think I always just put a lot of pressure on myself because I'm excited to play and do well. And especially, you know, familial pride, I think would be more than anything. But yeah, definitely, you know, DeAndre Yedlin was before me. Jordan Morris was before me. Aaron Kovar was before me. So I knew the names of the people who were before me, Darwin Jones, Sean Okoli, but I don't think both Henry and I can't speak for Henry, but I don't think I put too much pressure on myself because of people in front of me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you had kind of your first season bouncing between a little bit of time, you know, having some minutes with the first team and most of your minutes with Seattle Sounders too. What was that like, kind of bouncing between the USL side and the MLS outfit?
I think it's very odd doing that. I feel like MLS has moved away from doing that as much, but it was like a perfect storm of, we had a lot of forwards on the first team, but people were getting hurt left, right, and center. Or like, I think Jordan got hurt that year. Did Jordan get hurt that year? I don't remember.
Was that his ACL year maybe? Because he had a big knee injury, right?
That might have been the year. No. Jordan was healthy that year. I think it was like we had Will Bruin, me, Clint, and Jordan. Big names. But for some reason, I think we didn't have enough players that I kept making the bench. So I was continually, or like very frequently, on the MLS bench. And I was like, yeah, like this is great. Like I deserve to be here. Like I'm going to get in. Like this is great. So I was on the bench a lot. So I didn't play with S2 too much. But then when I did play with S2, I was kind of in my own head about like, I'm on the first team. Like I shouldn't be here. Like, what am I doing with S2? Like, this is a joke. So I don't think I put in enough like mental effort into playing with S2. And then I think there also was a big nervousness about, you know, being from the first team, playing with the second team, about like, I need to perform super well. So I was very much in my own head that year.
You feel as if maybe a better option would have been to like, hey, you're just going to be an S2 player for this year. And then you go into the season thinking, I need to go and dominate this level. And then maybe next year is the opportunity for me, or vice versa. You know, you're just on the first team bench and you're trying to get minutes. Like, do you think that bouncing between back and forth and having that pressure as you go down or as you go up kind of made it more difficult?
I think honestly, what happened was the best. I mean, one, I wouldn't change anything, but I think, I don't know, if I remember, I think a couple years after me, I worked with this life coach, and he was frequently at the MLS rookie symposiums where they would take all the new MLS players from college and kind of be like, don't spend all your money, and here's how to be successful in the MLS. And I remember, I think Garth Lagerwey, who was the GM of the Sounders, was speaking, and he said something that was like, you know, something you guys all need to get comfortable with is dominating like the second league. And I think if you told me that when I was coming in, I would have the same mentality, which is just like, I don't, you know, who cares about the second league? You know, I signed with the first team, I want to play with the first team. Yeah. But at the same time, if I was with the first team the whole time, again, I think I played maybe 60 minutes the whole year. So, and, you know, that's just realistically what happens a lot of the time. So I think I'm happy to have bounced between the two teams because I wasn't ready to play with the first team. And, you know, it was good to get minutes with the second team and actually play. I think the more important thing is having players who are mentally ready for the pro game and the pro level and, you know, everything that comes with it. So I think you have so many stories of those players who are successful right off the bat, either with the first team or playing down with the second team. But I just think I was very much in my own head about how I need to be and my ego and who I am as a player to be successful on either team, I would say.
Mm. For a player that's training day in and day out with an MLS club like Seattle, what does that look like? Like, what's the typical training day, or kind of what's your schedule like?
Me, I lived maybe like 30, 45 minutes from practice. So I would wake up, drive straight to training, eat breakfast there, kind of mingle with the people a little bit, even though I was a little shy. I sat around and tried to be friendly, or tried to be a part of the group. Brian Schmetzer was very much about young people and their development, kind of their grit. So he wanted me, Henry Wingo, another guy on the team, Zach Mathis, to kind of be out early in training. So we would try to go out and do some things in the morning, whether some touches or some two-touch or some dribbling thing, some shooting, whatever it was. So go out a little bit earlier than the big dogs, Clint, Nico, and Hunat, and try to work on some things. Go through training. I really like the training flow that the Sounders had. It would be a nice little kind of like warm up, rondo, passing drill, possession, game, done. Very fluid. So we'd go through that, and then stay after, maybe do some shooting, some more dribbling, kind of young professional development. Go in the locker room, get a smoothie that they made, delicious. Maybe we'd have a lift and then go home. The life of a professional is very chill. It's 2 to 3 hours a day max if you want it to be that short, or it could be a lot longer depending on what your personal schedule is.
Yeah, and you're usually home by early afternoon, I imagine, so you still have kind of the rest of the day to do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Something that you said there that was interesting. What is it like for a player that's maybe not the most outgoing? Because I know I've experienced the same thing as well. Like I've talked to players before, and they're like, when you go on trial, you should go and you should try and start a conversation with everybody to integrate yourself with the team as quickly as possible. And I'm like, but I'm really not that guy. Like, I'm not the guy that's like going to try and be friends with everybody right off the bat. I try and build that naturally. But it's tough, especially in trials when you're only there for a week. You got to kind of make an impact, and you don't want to be just the quiet guy that doesn't speak to anyone. What do you say to a player that is a little bit shy, that's maybe going on trial or joining a new club or something like that?
I mean, I feel like it always just takes time. I mean, yeah, I'm not a very socially outgoing, especially initially, person. So, I mean, any trial I've been on, any team I've joined, I worry less about talking to people. I worry more about playing well, working hard. And I think, once you make the team, or once you make an impact on the field, people start talking to you, people start joking with you, and then it's a lot easier. So I don't think you necessarily have to go out and, try to make friends off the bat, especially because, your play is more important. People would rather you play well and not be their friend than not play well and be like, hey, what's up? Did you see that new Netflix show? So.
Yeah. I think the game can do the majority of the talking for you, because it's like, I don't know, it might sound bad, but it's sort of like, yeah, you can be the funny guy on the team, but if you're shit, like, you're not going to be friends with the best players on the team. Whereas, exactly like you said, if you can play and the other players on the team, they can trust you, then that's all that really matters. Even if you're silent, you don't really speak to anybody.
If you're the funny guy, you're not going to be funny for long. Yeah, if you don't play well.
Exactly. It starts to get a lot less funny when you're constantly giving the ball away.
Yeah.
As you were wrapping up that season with Seattle, what was kind of your thinking of your standing with the club? Did you think, okay, I've built a little bit of momentum here, I can build upon this in my second year? Or were you having conversations with the coaching staff or the front office and maybe learning a little bit more about what their plans were for you?
So, yeah, after the first year, I knew I was on a 2-year deal. So I was like, okay, no problem, come back. It's going to be fine. So did a lot of work on the pitch, but also tried to do some mental work with this life coach to put myself in a better spot for the second season. So I went to preseason with the Sounders the second year, and I think it went a little bit better. Like, I was definitely happier with how I was doing. I was feeling a little bit more comfortable. I felt like I was learning the positions, or the position and how they wanted me to play. And after we came back from our first preseason trip, I remember Brian Schmetzer called me to his office, and he was like, hey, look, we don't think you're an MLS player. We think you should be, you know, in the USL, and we want to send you down to like S2 permanently, or well, I guess for the year or whatever it was. And I was like, interesting. Don't really want to do that. Obviously, that's a big, you know, downgrade. Also, I was just thinking about like, yeah, I'm in the first team locker room. I have to move to the second team locker room, and then I'm just
The logistics of it are just awful.
I was like, I'm going to be seeing the first team players, and like that just doesn't feel right. So I was just like, not really a big fan of that. But anyways, he was kind of like, you can either get on to S2, or we can send you, you know, to another USL club if you prefer that. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I've been in this system. I don't think I've presented myself in the best light, because I was just a very young, timid player who didn't mesh well with the coaching staff at that time. I just think personally, because, you know, I didn't really give off a good energy, just because I was kind of scared into myself. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to go on loan somewhere else. So that's when I kind of went on loan to Orange County for 2 weeks, which is an interesting story. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I'd love to go on loan. I started talking with the Sounders about which teams to go to, and Chris Henderson, who's part of the Sounders staff, I think he works at Inter Miami now, but he was like, you went to UCLA, I went to UCLA, I feel like you'd love California. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So he got me in contact with Orange County, and they're like, yeah, we want you down here right away. And I was like, great, that sounds cool. So I went down to Orange County, and my understanding was that it was permanent for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down there, played a couple games with them. Things were going well. And then I remember talking to GM, and I was like, hey, like, can I get my car down here? Because I'd love to have my own car. I'd love to be independent, not rely on my teammates again, because I'm kind of timid. I don't want to ask people for favors. And they were like, yeah, like, hold on. We're still talking to Seattle. And then eventually he was like, Jordan Morris just got hurt. The Sounders might want you back. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So waited. And then they're like, yeah, sorry, it's not going to work out. Sounders want you back. So, you know, like, good luck back in Seattle. So then I left Orange County, and I went to LA where my sisters were, just to kill some time. And Schmetzer called me and was like, hey, so I talked to the second team coach, and he doesn't want you down. He doesn't want you on the second team here, and we don't want you on the first team. So basically we're going to like put you on waivers. So that's kind of how I ended up like separating from Seattle.
Oh my God. So
Yeah.
basically it started with you thinking you were going on loan. Then they're like, actually, no, that the team that wanted to loan you actually still wants you. And then they're like, no, that's not the case at all.
Exactly. So I thought I was about to go back and play with the first team, because I was like, oh, Jordan Morris is hurt. They need a player. And then all of a sudden he was like, no one wants you here. So like, see ya. I was like, word.
Damn. Cold-blooded. Yeah. Was that your first, I'm sure you probably had experiences before, but was that your first ever experience of kind of realizing like, damn, this game is a little cutthroat, a little more cutthroat than maybe I thought that it was?
Definitely. Definitely was my first experience of, you know, I was talking about this with one of my friends the other day. When you think about going pro, you're like, playing time, face and like your name and jersey everywhere. Like you always think about like all the best things, but you don't think about like the little business aspects of it. And I think the reality of the situation was that Seattle wanted to kind of free up my roster spot and bring in another player. And you know, that's how the business goes. So yeah, I think that was my first taste of the business side.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the thinking at that point? You've now, you know, you've left Orange County because they've said your home club wants you, and then the home club says, nope, actually we don't. You know, your first experience, okay, wow, this game is a lot more cold-blooded and a lot more cutthroat than I really thought. Definitely a lot different than when I was just a kid that was playing up in Seattle, having fun with it every day. What's going through your head at that point?
So funny enough, before the end of the season prior, I was with S2 on a trip I think it was in Oklahoma City. I was talking to Peter, again, the guy who kind of sent me to Europe in the first place. And I was like, dang, like, I really wish I could have tried it out in Europe. Like, I don't know if like the USL is for me, like things are going so well, like being a homegrown player. And he was like, yeah, like, he's always been of the opinion that like the USL is a very tough league to be in. And it's very good to be in Europe, first for your development, but also just, you know, I think they respect young players a little bit better and you get a lot more looks. So I was talking to him, basically since I signed. So when I was kind of not going to Orange County, I was like, wait, this is actually kind of great because now I'm kind of free to go to Europe. So after I was cut, I stayed in California. I found this awesome trainer. His name is Nicky Hollander. He actually trains a lot of top pros. He trained like Ben Teke. He trained Steve Aquarigi. He's trained a lot of people. So I started working with him during that period of, I guess, hiatus or being off. And then I got my first European opportunity. Well, I guess my second European opportunity, but my first kind of real one. Anyways, I went to Denmark. That's all I'm trying to say.
So what evolved from earlier on? You mentioned how you never really pictured going overseas or going to Europe as something that you really wanted to do. Did kind of just seeing the way the US soccer landscape was and did you just feel like you needed something fresh, something new? Like what was the thought process change to say, yeah, you know what, let's go and see what Denmark's saying?
Well, yeah, I with the Sounders happened how it did. You know, you go on waivers and all the teams look at you and say, hey, this is a player we want. So I got passed up by all the MLS teams. I think it was also a period in the USL where most teams were full.
Okay.
So I think it would have been difficult for me to have tried to get on a USL team, but definitely being in the US, I was kind of like, you know what, I think I'm ready for a different opportunity. Scandinavia, Denmark would be tough and different because, you know, I'm far away from my family and I don't know the language necessarily, but at the same time, like Peter did a really good job of pitching like this European vision of like straight to the top.
Yeah.
And whenever I spoke to him, he was like, you know, like you go here, you go here, you go here. And like you do well, you move up, you move up. So I was very much bought into the idea of like, oh my God, if I go to Scandinavia, I'm going straight to the top. I'm going to be in the Premier League. So I was very excited for that. And I was very excited for the new challenge. I think just like football wise, I was very excited to progress.
I think that there's definitely that path becomes a little bit more linear, at least to see in Europe. Whereas doesn't always quite look like that in the States, where it's not like, you know, I do well at League One and then I go up and then I go up and I go up just without promotion or relegation and the system being a little bit murkier. But even in Europe, it's never just as cut and dry as you go in, you do well, everything's roses, and then you move up another level. But you were in a pretty good level in your first experience over in Europe playing in the Danish Superliga. What was that experience like when you kind of first touchdown in Denmark, and talk to me about the first couple of weeks, getting adjusted to the culture, getting adjusted to the football and the club?
All right. I first went over. This was actually even before I signed with my team, Vince School, but I went over. I actually had the same agent as Chase, this guy named Thomas. And I land in Denmark, first time ever. And my agent picks me up. Never met this man in my life. And we're just driving like an hour. We drive straight to this team called Hobro. And he's like, Hobro has a practice game today, right now. Do you want to play in it? And I was like, honestly, I hear so many people talk about like, oh, when you get off the plane, jet lag, whatever, like, you know, I don't want to play. But I was like, screw it, like I'll play. I don't care. So pull up at the facility, go into the locker room. I know nobody. I know only Emmanuel Sabi, who I went on trial to Las Palmas with, and I'd met him once before. We stayed 4 days together. So he and I say hi. There's actually a guy from college who went to Santa Clara, who's Danish, who's now trialing for that same team there. So anyways, we get in the game. I actually ended up doing pretty well. I played like, even though I hadn't played for a while, I'd just been training. I think I played straight up like 80 minutes and I scored a goal, which was awesome. And I come to find out what I thought was a trial. My agent then turned around to the coach and was like, hey, so what do you think of this guy? And the team was kind of like, oh, we didn't know this was a trial. And he was like, yeah, no, like, are you interested in this guy? And they're like, well, yeah, he did well, but like, let's see him again next week. We haven't seen enough.
Yeah.
Train during the week, play another practice game, and I score again. And my agent's like, so what do you think? And they were kind of like, oh, like, well, we haven't, let's give him another week. I spent a month on trial with Hobro. Come to find out, the coaches were big fans of me and really wanted me to be there. And the sporting director was not a fan of me and didn't want me there. So they were kind of trying to reconcile that. So I didn't actually end up making Hobro in the end of the day, because my agent's like, look, you need to give us a decision. They're like, you know what, we're not going to take you. So then I went on trial to the team that I ended up with, Ben Sussel, who's actually in the first division, which is the second highest tier, and trialed with them. They liked me, was going to sign there. And then same thing, sports director was like, we should hold off. Like, I don't know. So I ended up not signing there. And they were like, well, come back in the summer. Again, long rant, so sorry. They were like, come back in the summer. So I came back in the summer, and they actually promoted from the first division to the Super League while I wasn't there. So it was super good for me that I ended up in the Super League when I made that team. But my experience in Denmark, or first getting there, was horrifying. I remember I walked into a supermarket and tried to buy some stuff, and some woman started speaking Danish to me, and I kind of freaked out because I just felt so like fish out of water, confused, kind of shocked that I ended up where I was. But, you know, ended up growing out of that and actually really enjoying my time in Denmark. Made a lot of good friends.
Good. Happy to hear that. Yeah, I think everybody has that moment when you're in a foreign country. It's like almost a unanimous thing that I hear from players that play overseas. Like, and it always seems to be the grocery store too. I don't know why. It's like that's the traumatizing place for people, because somebody will say something to you and you just freeze. I don't know, for whatever reason. It doesn't matter how much Danish, how much German, how much whatever country you're in, how much you've practiced. That first moment where it's real and you get tested with the language, you're like, and your body just shuts down. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it was very weird. I think the other thing that was weird for me was I would be walking around the town, you know, exploring, and everything would just shut down at like 3 p.m. because people were just like, I'm just going to go home. So I was very confused by how much Danish people worked or what their lives were.
Yeah, they have a really good work-life balance there. But the people are incredibly friendly. Amazing culture, amazing football culture as well. What was your experience with that? Did you notice any real distinct differences between the passion for the game within the club, within fans?
Oh yeah, right away. I mean, I remember USL games, S2, like we had some fans. I remember people would show up, but there was not like the same spirit as these little towns had. So yeah, this first town that I trialed with, Hobro, tiny little town in Denmark, but like the games were packed. Everyone had the flags, everyone had the shirts, everyone had, like, knew the chants. You know, they had the whole, like, maybe you experienced this where, like, you know, you're warming up for the game and they're singing a chant with your name in it, and you go over and you do like the hey type thing. So very cool environment, very spirited environment. Amazing. Totally different from the US.
Yeah, I agree. Especially like, I think second division, third division soccer in our country is growing a little bit. And there's certainly some markets where you can get an amazing atmosphere, but it's just, I'm sure I've said this a million times in this podcast. What's so unique about those little clubs is like, that's the community's club. It's where everyone in the community has some sort of connection to it. Because oftentimes they're more than just football clubs, they're sport clubs. So anyone who has any interest in sport or just being social has some sort of connection to the club. So there's just such a deep rooted connection to the people that are there, to the staff, to the players. And it's something that I think the US is, I don't know if we can ever really replicate that level.
I would agree with that. I also don't know what it is, but there's something different about those like hometown clubs and the way that people come out and support and really like know all the players and all the little details of, I don't know, the chants and the cheering, and I don't know, there's just like there's something different about it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I heard something pretty interesting on a podcast that some of my friends produced, that a player who had played in Germany for a couple of years, he said something like, if you love cuisine, like if you love food more than anything, like you go to France, you go to Paris, because you experience, that's where food is like culture and food is everything. And so he was kind of saying something similar for football. Like if you love football more than anything, you go to somewhere in Europe, you go to Germany, you go to Denmark, you go to somewhere where it's the lifeblood of a lot of people, and it just kind of changed your perspective on the game.
100%
So
agree with that.
the experience in Denmark, were you there for one season with Vendsyssel?
I was with Vendsyssel for a year and a half. So I did one full season in the Super League. We got demoted, and then I did half of a season in the first division is what I did. Gotcha.
Was that drop in level kind of part of the reason why you chose to then go to Malta? Because I'm super interested. I don't think I've ever talked to a player that's played in Malta before, so I definitely have questions about that.
Oh yeah, hit me with them. So my first year in the Super League in Denmark with Vendsyssel was very interesting. We had a coach who promoted the team from the first division to the Super League. We had a new assistant coach, and then we had the same sports director. Halfway through, I think the first half of the year, so maybe about like August or so, our I guess chairman came to our team and was like, "Hey guys, so the sports director's leaving. No drama or anything, but he's just gonna do something different." And we're like, "Oh, okay, no problem." Come to find out, this man actually slept with one of the sponsors' wives, and they actually like caused a lot of trouble. So he had to leave, but then the sponsor's wife ended up leaving the sponsor and being with him. Drama. Anyway, so we lost the sports director.
It's like a telenovela right now.
Exactly. Fantastic story. So lost a sports director. We got a new sports director. This guy used to be a coach, and he's like, "Hey, I used to be a coach, but I'm done with that world. I just want to be a sports director." By November, December, he got an offer from a different team in the Super League to be a coach, and he left. So he switched sports directors twice at that point, and we got a new sports director come January. And the first half of the year was great. I worked my way into the team, started playing, and was really happy. The coach was a big fan of mine, and I was injured, but he was like, "Hey, we really need you to play in these big games. Like, we're playing Plumby, like one of the best teams. Like, I really want you to play." So it was great first half of the year. We got a new sports director in January. This man was not a fan of mine at all. I don't know why. And from then it kind of just went downhill. So the reason I left Denmark was kind of because the sports director was like, told me and my agent, he was like, "You don't have a future at this club. I'm not a fan of yours. You should probably just leave."
And just to put this in a little more context for maybe players who don't quite understand the difference, what is the difference between a coach and a sports director at a club like this? Like, to the best of your knowledge, like being a part of a club like this.
Oh, I guess you're right. So a coach obviously handles the team, the tactics, things like that.
Okay.
Things relating to the pitch and the players directly. The sporting director, at least in Denmark, his role is to talk with the coach and be like, "Okay, so you want to play a 4-3-3, you like to have fast wingers, you like to have center backs that maybe stay in or whatever. I will go find those players for you and bring them to you."
Okay.
So that's how I understood the relationship to be. Actually, more of the story was when we were still in the Super League, my sports director ended up firing our coaches, bringing in kind of like a puppet coach who like he worked with, but the sports director basically tried to run the team and save us from demotion, and he actually ended up costing us demotion. So he oversteps his bounds, but normally a sports director is just supposed to find the players and the pieces that the coach wants and bring them to him.
So really, in a perfect world, it's supposed to be like a partnership, but obviously in this case, it was kind of just like a who can grab the most power sort of situation.
Yeah. For some reason, he thought he knew best. So he started, he ousted the coach and then tried to do it all himself.
Okay. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give some clarity to those that might be confused about that. So we're nearing the end of that half year with Vendsyssel, and the sporting director and coach drama is still ongoing.
It's hot. Yeah. So got demoted because sports director got too big for his position.
And then that was the discussion then that started to lead to let's head on over to Malta.
Yes. So towards the end of my 1.5 years, so this was December of 2019, He was telling me things like that, and I was like, okay, like that's fine. So I spoke with my agent, and my agent was trying to find me different options. So one of the options that was going to happen was there's a team called Silkeborg in Denmark, and they were in the Super League at that time, and they're a very good team. They have a very good system. They develop a lot of very good players. And my agent was like, hey, I want to bring you to this team. And the deal was that it was basically going to be a swap. So I was going to swap to Silkeborg, and there's a team that was going to, or there's a player that was going to come down to Vendsyssel. So I would be going to the Super League. This person would be coming to the first division. That player who I was going to swap with did not want to go to my team. Understandably, we were kind of in shambles. So that ended up not happening. And the only thing that really came across, because this was all decided kind of like late January that this was happening, there was a sports director from Malta who'd come to Copenhagen, I think the year prior, and saw my team play in Copenhagen. So he'd followed my team and followed me and really liked me as a player. So he'd inquired about me before. My sports director was like, no, we're not going to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. And then come December, he inquired about me again. My sports director was like, yeah, take him. So that was how I ended up in Malta. Basically, yeah, I was like, I can't be on this team. I need to switch teams because nothing good's happening for me here. And this Maltese guy was like, hey, come here. And my agent was like, what do you think of Malta? And I was like, Malta, I don't even know what that is.
Where is it? What language do they speak? What's going on?
That's exactly it. And I remember the team was Balsan, and I remember I looked at Balsan, Malta, and the first picture that came up was like this little church, and I was like, where the hell am I about to live? But come to find out, Malta's a very tiny island. You can go anywhere in 15 minutes. So it was great. Ended up in Malta.
And again, it circles back to a point that you were talking about earlier, that like you were saying to your friend, that you picture being a professional soccer player as this kind of thing, right? That you are playing big stadiums and your name's on the back of the jersey and you're scoring goals and blah, blah, blah. You're doing interviews like this podcast that gets millions of downloads week in and week out. But then, you know, fast forward, you're in a club in Denmark where behind the scenes, it seems like a dumpster fire at some points, where people are just getting fired and there's backstabbing and all sorts of crazy things. There's a lot that goes into just being a professional that a lot of people don't really understand or don't get to see.
Yeah, there are a lot of little dynamics playing out behind the scenes of every club.
Yeah, 100%. At any club in any country, in any league where money starts to get involved, things can start to get a little bit weird.
Yes, sir.
So we're in Malta, and how would you describe Balzan FC? How would you describe Malta? What would you say to a player that's like, hey, I had this opportunity in Malta and I want to go play there? What would you say?
Oh my God, Malta is beautiful. It's so pretty. The water's so blue. The people are very nice. I mean, any European opportunity, come to find out, European opportunities are very rare. Well, I'm not even coming to find out, but, you know, not everyone gets the European opportunity. And I think it still holds true that, you know, if you play in Europe, a lot of teams are watching the different leagues, and it's very easy to move up and move on if you play well, if you do well.
Yeah.
So any European opportunity, I definitely say take it. But Malta was very cool and different. I think coming from Denmark, which is it's a league, or at least I was on it's a league. It's a league that's very focused on like technical ability. It's also like team organization. I know my team, we were kind of bottom of the Super League, and we kind of knew that. So we focused a lot on staying in our 4-4-2 block and defending as a team, and then, you know, kind of taking our chances for counters. So going to Malta was different for me because it was a lot more individual. You had a lot of like older, experienced Maltese players who played on the team, and then you also have a lot of young talents. So I think it was a definite difference in style of play, but it was really cool. I loved Malta. I thought the funny thing about Malta is, since it's so small, they actually only have 3 stadiums total, like on the whole island. So all the games in the Premier League, is what it's called, were played like on one of these 3 pitches.
So nobody really had a home stadium. Everyone just kind of shared.
So you had like a home training ground. Ours was literally at like a high school. The worst pitch, the worst turf you've ever seen in your life. So flat. But then, yeah, there's no home stadium. There were only 3. There's like the national team stadium, There was a really nice grass pitch that was by the water, beautiful, and then there was a turf one that was by the national team stadium. Those are the three stadiums that anyone played games in.
Hmm. Which do you think, in your experience thus far in your career, has really suited you in terms of, you said that playing style was so different from Malta to Denmark, and I'm sure there's also differences when you were in the US as well. What do you feel like has suited the way that you like to play?
That's a good question. I would say the way that I like to play was very influenced, or it has been very much changed by my time in Denmark. I think I kind of craved learning a new way of playing and developing as a player. And those 2 years or a year and a half I spent playing in Denmark were very good for me in terms of I learned how to defend. I learned how to press. I learned how to, I don't know, play more in a team, play more in a shape. So I really liked playing in Denmark, and I really liked learning the system out there. And I reflect fondly back on that time, even though, craziness was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, clearly you did enjoy it because you found yourself back there again.
True. That is true.
So was the experience in Malta just not something that you wanted to continue to pursue after that season, or did the opportunity in Denmark come about and it was something that you didn't really want to turn down?
So kind of like we were talking about things going on behind the scenes all the time, I got to my Maltese team and they hadn't been doing well. They were traditionally one of the, bigger clubs in Malta. And I think they were sitting maybe in like 6th or 7th that year. So I got there, I think I practiced one or two times, and we had a game against one of the other bigger clubs. And we were losing, I think we were losing 2-1. And someone on my team got a red card, and our coach was ejected, or my coach was like not there that game for some reason. Maybe he had a red card the game prior. So the assistant coach kind of looks down the bench and he's like, we need a center attacking midfielder. And he's like, Seyi, get in there. Never played there in my life. We lost 3-1 or 4-1. Next day I go to training and we have a meeting, and our assistant coach is like apologizing, and our head coach is mad at him. Bottom line, he ended up getting fired because he did something against the coach's wish, which was put me in at center attacking mid versus some other player. Mm-hmm. So there was some drama with that. A couple games later, our head coach got sacked or stepped down. So that was all in shambles. But the real reason I left Malta was coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was March 2020. It's March 2020, and coronavirus is happening in the US, and Malta's a tiny, tiny place. I think they had one case at that time. Mm-hmm. But the league was shutting down. They're like, hey, we're going to take 2 weeks off and then come back after 2 weeks once this whole virus thing settles down. And me thinking was kind of like, there's no way this is just going to be for 2 weeks. This is going to be shut down for me. I was like, this is going to be like a month. It's going to be crazy. So I packed up half of my stuff and came home to the US, and then ended up never going back to Malta because of the whole coronavirus situation and the leagues being shut down.
Yeah. And I'm sure, especially you with the pre-med background that you had as well. I mean, who knows if anyone really could have predicted that still to this day, today, we'd be talking about coronavirus in the way that we are. But I'm sure you could see the writing on the wall a little bit, like that all these people that are saying, yeah, we'll stop playing soccer for 2 weeks and then it'll be back. It's not exactly going to work out like that.
Yeah. Luckily because I could have stayed in Malta for those 2 weeks, but I was definitely a little homesick, and I had a very little apartment there that was lovely. But I was like, I would go crazy if I stayed here by myself for 2 weeks or longer.
Yeah. So you then took kind of a couple months off during the coronavirus, right?
Yes. I went home in March, and I was at home until September, October. So, it was good to spend a lot of time with my family because I hadn't seen them in a while since I'd been abroad for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just at home training. So I trained by myself. One of my friends, my really good friends from home, his little sister was playing in college and she was not doing anything either. So she actually trained with me, and I kept up with my trainings that I got from my old trainer who sent me to Europe in the first place, Nikki Hollander. So I was just doing a bunch of super intense trainings, waiting for my next opportunity. And that didn't come until September, October-ish.
How nice was that though, to have that time? Like you said, the past 2 years you'd been away from home, away from family being in Europe? How nice was that to have those few months where it was just like football and family?
Amazing. I mean, I think the other thing I kind of learned from being abroad was that I did value family a lot,
Yeah.
and I was starting to think that it would be about time for me to come back to the U.S. just because, yeah, I hadn't seen my parents. I mean, they would visit, and I'd see them, for Christmas and during the summer. But I miss being in my family dynamic. There's me and I have three siblings and two parents, so we're usually always talking and very close. So I think I started to want to come back. So having time back in the U.S., seeing my family was really, really good. I really, as awful as the pandemic was and still is, like I really much enjoyed the fact that it brought me home and I got to hang out with my family.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a lot of people share that sentiment. Like I always say, I would never wish that to happen again or to happen to anyone, because I know how devastating it was. But that was definitely a benefit that I got out of it as well, was that extended period of time getting to spend with family. What do you think, in addition to that appreciation of your family and maybe an appreciation for a different style of football as well, being over in Europe, what are some other things that you think even just living abroad maybe taught you about yourself or you learned through that whole process?
Great question. So I'd never really lived on my own. So
Yeah.
high school, lived with my parents. College, I lived with my roommate for a year, but you ate dorm food and stuff. And then actually I ended up living with my sister, who was also in LA. So we just lived like in an apartment by UCLA campus. So I'd always really lived with my family. So lived with my sisters at college, lived at home with Sounders. Going abroad was my first time I was like really on my own, and I went really far. So, learned how to fend for myself a little better, learned how to self-advocate, learned how to cook, learned how to get a phone plan, different things like that. So I very much advocate / appreciated my time abroad just for the independence and kind of growing up more than I was at that time.
Yeah. Was that ever difficult for you mentally? Were there growing pains kind of in the beginning of trying to figure out all that stuff on your own, or being that first time where you're really not isolated, but more so than you've been in the past?
I don't think it was ever super difficult. I think I would stay in touch with my family and I'd be like, Dad, I think I need a phone. He'd be like, well, go find a carrier and find the best carrier and talk to someone from your club, and I'm sure they'll help you out. I actually had a very nice man named Torben and Michelle, who everyone in Denmark spoke English, but they were very nice to me and they really helped me with everything I need, whether it was, finding an apartment, getting a phone plan, setting up a bank account, different things like that. So it wasn't too bad, but it was definitely nice to be learning how to do some things on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've now been able to, the past year, been able to have that experience of getting to come back home and play in the US. How did it come about that you were able to sign with the Phoenix Rising, a super historic club in the USL, and one of those ones that I was kind of mentioning before I think of when I think of a club that has created that culture around lower level soccer?
So after coming back from Denmark in, when was that? I guess November, also because of COVID. I was definitely thinking that I'd want to be domestic. That club that I was at, T-Stead, was wanting me back, but I was kind of like, no, I think I want to try my luck in the USL. So I was training, didn't have anything at all. And then somehow an agent found me, a trial with Phoenix. And I was nervous because obviously I knew Phoenix was one of the best teams. But at the same time, I was like, you know what, like, I played in the Super League, it can't be too different from that. Like, it's going to be a high level, but, I think I can do it. So ended up getting that trial and was here for like a week, or in Phoenix for like a week or two, and did really well. And was lucky enough to get a contract. So I was very happy and excited about that. And it was so affirming and nice to get a contract from the best team in the USL, because I was not sure where I stood in the USL. So I was happy to come back and kind of kill my trial.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially having, again, almost come full circle of starting your career kind of in and around that league, and then going and trying your luck elsewhere, and then figuring out how you still fit into that league, what the level is like. Has it changed? Has your level changed? So I'm sure that was rewarding.
Yes.
Going to Phoenix, I know obviously you then went on loan a little bit after signing that contract. What is it like, maybe for, again, if we talk to the listener that doesn't know what it's like to be with a club that loans a player out, What is that like? And a real loan, not the Orange County loan of years before.
Oh yeah, an actual thing. Basically what happened was I was on Phoenix. I had my trial. They signed me. They were very excited to have me. I was very excited to be there. Couple weeks into the season, I wasn't really playing. I wasn't even on the roster. And I was kind of, I guess, a pest in the coach's ear, kind of being like, hey, like, what can I do? I'd really like to play. Can I do better? And he was kind of like, no, you're doing such a great job. And, yet I wasn't on the roster. And I was like, this is odd. So I eventually got an offer for a loan from OKC. And I was like, I don't care like what it is. Like, I want to go play. So like, I'll take it. So, I think I almost forced a loan in a way, because I was kind of like, I came to this team to play. Like, I know this is a good team and I know there are a lot of good players on this team, but I think I should be playing on this team. Mm-hmm. So, self-advocating kind of got me a loan. And, I think loans might be viewed as a bad thing, but I was very happy to go on it because it just meant more playing time and more happiness for me versus, sitting on a bench or, sitting at home watching your team play.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's all kind of depends on what stage of your career that you're at. If you're in a position like you were, where maybe the past year or two has been a little bit up and down, I've been in different countries, haven't got enough real consistent game minutes. It's like, I need to go to a place where I can consistently play. It's one of the most important things. Training at a high level is great, but there's nothing that can compare to actual game minutes week in and week out.
Correct. And that's kind of how I felt in Denmark as well. And I think that was also part of my motivation to come back to the States. I was like, okay, I'm in Denmark. I'm on this team. I'm playing some minutes, but, I really want to be playing from the start. I don't think I've played enough minutes, even my whole career. I don't think I've played enough minutes or as many as I'd want to really develop. And I think game minutes are so critical. Like, again, you can train at such a good level, but unless you're doing it in the games, it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. And your time with Oklahoma City Energy also included, it looks like an injury. I saw on Instagram a picture of you playing with the Batman mask on. What's the story behind that?
The story behind that. So our team was in Kansas City, training at the Kansas City complex before our game the next day. And we were playing like a small-sided, I think it was something chaotic. It was like a 9v9 on like less than half a pitch. And one of my teammates shot the ball, and it was kind of a bad shot, and ended up like rolling up my leg and popping up by my face. And I was right next to the keeper. So I quickly like headed the ball, and the keeper went to punch it, and he just rocked me in the face. Oh. And I remember I went and I sat down, and I was talking to my assistant coach, and I was like, is my nose like not straight? Because I was feeling it. It did feel straight. He's like, no, you look good. You look good. No, you're good. And I went off to the side because the game kind of stopped, and I looked at my nose. I was like, no, this is not straight. And everyone was like, no, let me see. And they're like, no, it looks good. And I was like, no, I know my nose is not straight. Anyway, so from that, I ended up getting a concussion, which I'd never had before. And I was out probably almost a month. It was just almost a month of sitting in my room in the dark, not going outside, watching Money Heist. So yeah, it wasn't great, but yeah, probably the worst injury I've had. I broke my leg, and I don't think it was nearly as bad as that. But yeah, that was a part of my season.
Wow. Yeah. Concussions are one of the weirdest, I think, injuries to have. I only had one, and it was relatively mild, obviously not anything compared to what you had to go through. But what was that like, just spending each day, not being able to train, like you said, having to kind of stay in a dark room away from the outside world?
I don't know why. I think injuries are kind of funny in the sense that I also didn't realize how kind of severe it was. I thought it was pretty chill. I thought it was going to go away. So the first, I want to say maybe week or so, I ended up like going to practice. So I would just be there like with sunglasses on in the locker room, like hanging out with the guys, because I didn't feel it was right for me to just sit at home because it was boring, but also, you should be with your team. So I was there joking around, hanging out, but I soon figured out that kind of sitting in the light exacerbated my symptoms. So sitting in my room was weird, boring, terrible. not much good came from it besides me just sitting there and watching Money Heist. But it was what it was, and I actually ended up. I think I sat in my room for a while, maybe let's say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we kind of figured out that I needed to get surgery and straighten my nose. So then that put me out another week. Yeah, that wasn't great. Well, I didn't get a full surgery. I kind of just got they knocked me out and then kind of just broke it back into place. So it wasn't anything crazy, but I did get some sort of a cosmetic surgery.
And where we I think this brings us almost up to current day, where we kind of at now in terms of off season, I know we spoke about it a little bit at the top. I remember I asked earlier in the episode what a typical training day was like when you were with the Sounders. Like, what's a typical off season day for you like now?
Typical off season day. I think this is an abnormal period. You've actually caught me in. Kind of post my OKC season, I was taking a look at myself, looking at my career, look at my age, look at my situation. Mm-hmm. And I've been very much considering retirement.
Oh, okay.
I've actually I took a couple courses from UCLA this summer just since they were online, and I've really enjoyed those, and I still want to pursue the pre-med path. Yeah. So I think I've been looking a lot at that recently, but at the same time, still considering my options in the USL. I think something this therapist I work with told me was that, no matter what age you leave it, and no matter what you've done, even if I played in the Prem, scored goals, Champions League, World Cup, the day you have to leave the sport, you're always going to miss it. And I was like, that's so true. So I've been trying to balance thinking about retirement and then also thinking about still playing. So I've very much been considering my options this off season. But my trainings usually look like, I actually have a trainer in Phoenix who I've been working with. His name is Noel Castillo. He's a very good trainer. I really like what he does. Focus a lot on the technical, but also, scanning and also just little details that I think are very important. Won't get into too much detail, give away his secrets. But I'll usually work with him and my friend Ryan or my friend Lalo, my friend Noah from Phoenix, and just do the little things every single day.
As someone who has, I know you mentioned earlier on your career that there was a life coach that you would speak to, speaking to maybe a therapist now at this point in your career as well. How important has that been for you, kind of taking care of the mental side of the game for yourself? Because I think it's something that is talked about a bit more now in the game that maybe it wasn't in the past. But can you speak to that at all, how helpful it's been for you, and what your experience has been like with it?
Of course. I think for me, it's absolutely critical. I think in general in the game of soccer, well, probably in any sport, it's just there are such minute little details and differences that go from that take you from, let's say, being in the USL to being in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Not all of it is tactical, even though a lot of it is. But, I think I remember one of my coaches in Denmark, he played for a lower team in Denmark. He scored one goal. I think he scored a bicycle kick. And it took him from playing in Denmark to playing in Italy. So I think there's such little details and such finite things that make a difference. And I think the mentality has been one thing for me that I've always wanted to work on, because I am more of a shy, timid person. I think I need to work on kind of putting myself out there in different ways so people kind of understand what I'm about and how I like to play and how I like to be, because I think it's a little different from other people. So I think mentality for me, and not even just work ethic or anything, because that's not really my issue, but just putting myself out there in ways so people could see me better than they do, I think is the most important. So I think working with life coaches, working with therapists who really understand the game and understand the kind of the psychological aspects of being a player, being a different person, are very important.
Have you seen those conversations come to fruition in your psychology, I guess, as you're entering a season, entering training or entering games? Have you kind of seen some of those tactics or ideas that they give you in those sessions that you get to speak with? Have you seen them develop you as a player kind of mentally?
I think so. This therapist I've been working with recently, she's great. So she's actually worked with the Oklahoma City Thunder for a long time. I don't think she still works there anymore, but she has a lot of insight on, I guess, also the psychology of a player, but also the psychology of a club, psychology of a coach. So some of the coolest things she's told me are just about, like, for example, I think she was talking about how I think the Thunder wanted to bring in, let's say, a number one draft pick, and the coach was like, "Oh, we think he's going to be so good for this team. Like, he's so like tenacious, he's so talented." And she's like, "Well, actually, I don't think he's a good fit for this team, like psychologically, because let's say he's not a good leader, he's not a good team player. You know, like I think the psychology is so important." And so I would say nothing she's directly told me yet I've been able to apply, because I've only started working with her over these past 2 months. But just the sessions I've had with her have been life-changing for me, just for my perspective on the game and on perspective on myself and my career.
Yeah. Do you think your interest in going into the pre-med track, in conjunction with this work that you're doing with life coaches and therapists and stuff like that, has that been something that's kind of sparked your interest about going into sports psychology, or is the medicine that you want to do kind of something unrelated?
100%. I mean, I think I've always had a big affinity and love for psychology. I've always been very interested in it. The only way I really thought of being involved in like the brain and neuroscience was being a neurosurgeon. So I think deep down, I'm like, oh, neurosurgery would be very cool. But actually, after talking to her and after playing the game and seeing that there are so many little things and little details that go into being a pro and being successful, I think being a sports psychologist would be awesome, because I would love to help younger players, other players, you know, kind of work through their careers in more helpful and constructive and happy ways than I have kind of worked through mine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's, you know, it's something that I've talked about openly on this podcast before. It's something that I've struggled with. I know a lot of other players struggle with it as well, but it's not always something that's been openly talked about. How difficult it really is to be a pro, to stay a pro, the sacrifices that you need to make, the things that you give up. You know, it's, again, it just circles back to our initial conversation of, I think that, sure, being a professional soccer player on the surface looks like it can be the greatest job in the world. You know, what's better than being paid to kick a soccer ball around on a field? But
True.
There's a lot that people don't understand. What happens off the field, what that life is really like for a player. So again, it's, I think, something why I like to share stories like this with people, to maybe just open up a different side of what people view the game as, a different perspective. So I appreciate you coming on to share your story with us. It's definitely a valuable one.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm glad. I think, you know, after listening to a couple of these, like I really think it's good to, you know, share your story and hear like the little details, because some people might have a story like mine or a feeling like mine, and some people might have a story or a feeling like someone else's. So yeah, it's good. It's just good for people going through it.
Yeah. To know that there's a player who maybe is similar to you, or if you don't see a player that has a route that you've taken, maybe you can find one that is similar, or someone's done a completely different way that you never even thought of. You know, I just talked to a player recently who's played in Thailand and Cambodia and stuff like that, and I was fascinated by that. And, you know, now I've talked to a player who's played in Malta before, so can always learn something new.
Yes. Take a little bit from me, take a little bit from other people, and you'll be good.
100%. All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck in the next few months, kind of figuring out what's next for you. I'm sure you'll have success in it wherever you go. But again, I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with us and popping in the 11.
No problem. Thank you, my G. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. See you later.
See you later.
I want to thank Seyi again for being in the 11 with us this week. Great interview, great conversation. I want to thank all of you who continue to listen week in and week out. Thank you so much for your support and your continued support as we move forward here. I want to especially thank those of you who at the top made sure to rate and review this pod if you haven't already done so. Like I said, Apple has it, Spotify now has it, I know, and I'm sure any other platform in which you might be listening has an option for you to be able to rate and review the show. So if you could do that, it helps so much to grow the brand and grow the podcast a little bit. So again, thank you, Seyi, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.